No one had gone near the Black Mountain for hundreds of years. People from nearby villages believed it was cursed. Strange lights were seen in the sky above it. At night, deep rumbling sounds came from under the ground. Some people said they saw shadows walking around the mountain, even when there was no wind. Others claimed they heard voices whispering in a language no one understood. Children were told bedtime stories warning them never to go near the mountain. It was called the Place of Sleeping Gods. But David Kane was not afraid. He was an explorer from Earth. He had visited many dangerous places in the galaxy. He didn't believe in curses or old legends. He believed in finding the truth. That's why he came to planet Orion. It was a dead planet, cold and silent, with black rocks and empty skies. But the old map showed something buried deep inside the Black Mountain. The maps called it the Ancient Trial. No one had ever explained what the trial really was. No one had ever come back from it either. That made David even more curious. The people in the nearby village tried to stop him. An old man stood in his path and said, "You don't understand what lies beneath. The trial is not for humans." David smiled politely and walked past him. He thought they were just scared. He thought this would be another mystery he would solve. He had no idea what was waiting for him. The climb to the mountain was hard. The rocks were sharp. The air got thinner the higher he went. His machine showed strong magnetic fields growing stronger as he got closer to the peak. When he reached the top, the wind suddenly stopped. Everything became quiet. Too quiet. Even his breathing sounded too loud. That's when he saw it. The stone gate. It was huge and half buried under dust and ash. Symbols were carved into the surface, glowing faintly in red. They didn't look like any language David had seen before. He walked slowly toward the gate. His flashlight flickered. His boots crunched over the ash, but it felt soft, almost like walking on bones. He reached out his hand and touched the gate. The stone felt warm. As soon as his fingers made contact, the ground shook. A loud sound echoed from deep below the mountain like something was moving. The symbols on the gate started to glow brighter. And then, the gate opened. It didn't swing or break. It just slid into the ground without making a sound. Behind it was a tunnel, long, dark, and cold. David hesitated for just a second, then turned on his light and stepped inside. The moment he entered, the air changed. It felt heavier, like it was pressing on his chest. The tunnel walls were smooth, black and slightly wet, like they were alive. He kept walking. The deeper he went, the more his tools started to glitch. His scanner couldn't read anything. His comms were dead. His light flickered every few steps, but David didn't turn back. He had come too far. Suddenly a voice spoke, but it didn't come from behind or in front. It came from inside his own head. "You are not worthy," the voice said, deep and angry. "But you are here. The trial begins." David froze. His hand went to his weapon, but nothing was there. The tunnel had taken it. He didn't remember losing it. His light went out. Complete darkness. He tried to move, but his legs felt heavy. The air got colder. He took a shaky breath. And then he heard breathing. Something big. Something ancient. It was not a machine. It was alive. He turned around but saw nothing. Yet he could feel it. Something watching him. Something not sleeping anymore. Far away, in space, lights started to turn on. Across the galaxy, old machines buried under dead. Planets began to hum. In secret chambers on forgotten worlds, ancient eyes opened slowly. The gods were waking up, because one human had entered the trial. David took one step forward. The floor under him lit up. A circle of symbols formed around him. His body rose into the air. His heart pounded. Visions flashed in his mind. Planets burning. Gods falling from the sky, voices screaming in pain and power. He saw the past. He saw the future. And then, he saw nothing. He fell to the ground. The symbols vanished. He gasped for air. The tunnel was still dark, but now he was not alone. A shadow stood ahead. It was tall, not human, with glowing eyes and no mouth. It stared at him without moving. David slowly stood up. The shadow raised its hand and pointed deeper into the tunnel. The trial had begun, and, outside the mountain, storms formed over Orion for the first time in centuries. The sky changed colors. The villagers below dropped to their knees and whispered old prayers. The gods had been disturbed, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. David followed the shadow through the dark tunnel. It didn't speak. It didn't look back. Its feet didn't touch the ground. It floated silently like a ghost. The deeper they went, the more David felt like the mountain was alive. The walls pulsed, like a slow heartbeat. The air grew colder. His breath came out in white clouds. His flashlight had died, but he could still see. Faint blue light now lined the walls, pulsing gently like veins. He didn't know how long he had been walking. Time felt strange here. Minutes felt like hours. His watch had stopped working. The shadow finally stopped at a massive stone door. It was covered in the same strange symbols. But these were not glowing. They looked burned, damaged, as if something had tried to destroy them. The shadow turned to David. For the first time, it spoke, but not with its mouth. Again, the voice entered David's mind. It was not loud, but it felt heavy, like it pushed into his thoughts. "You may enter," it said, "but understand. You are not being tested by gods. You are being watched by them." The door slowly opened. Inside was a round chamber, so large that David couldn't see the ceiling. Stone pillars stretched into the dark above. A strange fog covered the floor. In the center of the chamber, a platform floated in the air, held by nothing. On it sat a small cube spinning slowly, covered in glowing lines. It looked ancient and dangerous. David stepped inside. The moment his foot touched the fog, whispers filled the air. They came from all directions, voices speaking different languages. Some sounded human, others didn't. Some cried, some laughed, some screamed. David tried to stay calm. He stepped carefully through the fog toward the platform. His body felt heavy. It was like walking through water. Every step took more effort. His mind felt like it was being pulled in different directions. Suddenly, he saw something move in the fog. It was not the shadow. This was different. Tall shapes walked at the edges of the mist. He couldn't see their faces, only their glowing eyes. They circled him slowly, never getting too close. But they were watching, judging. David reached the platform. He looked up at the cube. It stopped spinning. "Touch it," the voice in his mind said again. "If you wish to continue the trial." David hesitated. He felt the cube pulling at him, calling him. But it also felt like a warning. Like the moment he touched it, something terrible would begin. Still, he reached out. The moment his fingers touched the cube, the world around him shattered. He was no longer in the chamber. He was falling through space. Stars rushed past him. He saw planets crumbling, oceans turning to fire, creatures screaming as they were erased from time. He saw massive beings made of light and shadow, gods battling in the sky. And then he saw Earth. It was burning. People ran. Cities exploded. The sky cracked open, and standing in the center of it all was himself. But not as he was. His eyes were glowing. His body changed. He looked more like the shadows than a man. David screamed. The vision ended. He collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath. The cube was gone. The chamber was empty now. Even the fog had disappeared. Then the voice returned. "You have seen what may come," it said. "This is the price of knowledge." David stood up slowly. His hands were shaking. "What is this place?" he whispered out loud. "What are you?" the voice answered, calm and cold. "We are the ones who watched over your kind. Before your species even walked upright, before you named your son, we were here, but we are not gods. We were guardians, until we slept. "Why did you sleep?" David asked. "Because the last trial failed," the voice said. "And the human who entered before you broke the seal." David's eyes widened. "Someone came before me?" "Yes," said the voice. "Long ago. He woke the Watchers. He tried to take the knowledge, but he was not ready. What happened to him? He became something else. Something lost. His mind broke. He wanders between worlds now, searching for a name." David felt a chill run down his spine. "And what about me?" he asked. The voice was quiet for a long time. "You passed the first gate. But the trial is not over. You have seen the future. Now you must decide. Will you stop it or become it?" The chamber began to shake. Cracks formed on the stone walls. A loud sound echoed through the mountain, like a roar from beneath the world. The shadows returned. This time, they were closer. One stepped forward, raising its hand. A door appeared behind David, made of white light. The shadow pointed to it. "Step through," it said. "The trial continues." David looked back at the platform, now empty, then at the shadow, then at the door. He didn't know what was waiting on the other side, but he knew one thing. There was no turning back. Not now. Not ever. David stepped through the door of light. It felt like stepping into ice. His whole body froze for a second. Then warmth returned. But he wasn't in the chamber anymore. He was standing in the middle of a forest. But it wasn't any forest he had seen before. The trees were silver. Their leaves were black and sharp. The sky above was dark blue, almost purple, with no sun, no moon, no stars, just emptiness. David looked around slowly. Everything was too quiet. No wind, no insects, no movement. Then he heard the sound. A slow, deep heartbeat. It wasn't his own. The ground pulsed softly with each beat. The trial had brought him to another place. A new test had begun. In the distance, a red light flickered between the trees. David began to walk toward it. The forest floor was soft and strange, like walking on thick sponge. Every step made a squishing sound. His body still ached from the visions. He felt tired, but knew stopping wasn't an option. As he got closer, he saw the light was coming from a stone altar. It stood alone in a small clearing. Around it, the trees were dead, burned and blackened. On the altar lay a large book. It was closed, but glowing softly. The voice returned. But this time, it wasn't one voice. It was many. "We remember," they whispered. "We remember the fire, the betrayal, the human who lied." David stepped closer to the book. It had no title. Its cover was made of leather, but the leather felt alive, like it was breathing. The voices grew louder. "You must open it. You must see." David reached out and touched the book. It opened on its own. Inside were drawings, strange images, creatures with wings and hundreds of eyes, cities floating in the sky, humans kneeling before something giant, something with no face, only light. Then the pages flipped by themselves. One page showed David. It was a perfect drawing, his face, his clothes, even the scar on his hand. The next page showed him standing at the center of a circle of fire, and behind him, the gods. But their eyes were closed. They were asleep, still sleeping. A final page flipped. It showed the gods, awake. Their eyes were open, and burning, and David was gone. The wind blew suddenly. The trees shook. The heartbeat sound grew louder, faster. David stepped back. The book slammed shut. Behind him, something moved. He turned quickly. A woman stood, there. She looked human, but her skin was too pale, almost silver. Her eyes were white, no pupils. She wore armor made of glass and stone. "You have opened the book of memory," she said. Her voice echoed strangely. "Now you must face what it shows." David tried to speak, but the woman raised her hand. You don't need to speak. Not. Here. The trial speaks for you. She pointed at the forest. You must find the lost bell. Only its sound can call the sleeping gods. Only its sound can warn them. Or wake them. David nodded slowly. The woman's body faded into mist. He was alone again. He walked deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller. The sky darkened. Strange symbols appeared on the bark, symbols he had seen before, on the gate, and on the cube. They were watching him. He reached a river of black water. No bridge. No boat. Then he saw something float toward him. A stone path, one step at a time, rose from the river. Forming slowly, it led across. David stepped onto it carefully. Each stone felt cold. The river below made no sound. Halfway across, he heard a whisper behind him. Why did you come here, human? He turned. A figure stood at the edge of the river. It looked like him. Same face, same clothes, but its eyes were empty. Its smile was wrong. I wanted the truth, David said. The copy laughed. Then you'll drown in it. The figure stepped onto the stones. The river began to rise. David ran. The path crumbled behind him as he moved. He jumped just in time, landing on the other side. The copy disappeared into the river with a hiss. David stood, breathing hard. Ahead was a stone tower. It looked broken, old, covered in vines. But something shined inside. He walked up the steps carefully. Inside the tower, at the top, was a small bell. It looked simple. Bronze, rusted, but it pulsed with strange energy. David reached for it. The moment his fingers touched it, everything turned white. He was standing in the sky now. No ground, no direction, only clouds and silence. Then the gods appeared, 7 of them, massive, glowing, silent. They did not speak, but David felt their minds inside his own, watching, weighing, judging. One god stepped forward. Its body was made of stars and fire. It raised a finger. Your trial has changed, the god said. Your presence has woken us too soon. There is something wrong in the worlds. Another god spoke, this one shaped like a shadow with wings. The old threat has returned. And you brought it with you. David felt his heart drop. What? Threat? He asked. I didn't bring anything. The gods looked at each other, then they spoke together. The other. David didn't understand. Then it hit him. The copy. The figure that looked like him. It hadn't died in the river. It had escaped. And now, it was free. David stood frozen in the white sky, surrounded by the 7 gods. Their forms shifted. Light, shadow, fire, mist. Nothing about them stayed the same, but their eyes were all fixed on him. You brought the copy with you, said the god of stars. The shadow self, David's voice shook. I didn't mean to. I didn't even know. It existed. You created it the moment you touched the trial, another god said. Its voice was like metal scraping stone. The trial doesn't test only the body. It tests the soul. What was hidden in you now walks free. David's mind raced. The copy looked like him, acted like him, but it wasn't human. It had no soul, no mercy. And if it escapes this place? He asked. The gods looked at each other. For the first time, they seemed uncertain. It cannot leave the trial. Unless you fail. Suddenly the sky cracked above them. A black line split the clouds. Light and sound vanished for a moment like the universe blinked. The gods turned sharply. It has found a way to the core, the shadow god whispered. The core of the trial? David asked. No, said the god made of lightning. The core of us. Our prison. Our tomb. The ground returned beneath David's feet. He was no longer floating. He stood inside a chamber made of glass, suspended in space. Below him, a glowing heart beat slowly, massive and alive. Around it, huge chains held something in place, something that moved, but never fully awoke. The sleeping one, the voice said inside his mind. The first god. The one we could not destroy. David stared at it. A shape too big to understand. Not a body, more like a force. A storm trapped in time. The copy wants to wake it, said the gods. If he rings the bell, the real bell, the ancient one buried in the core, the sleeper will rise. David's blood ran cold. And what happens then? Everything ends, said the gods together. Not just Earth, not just Orion. All things. Time. Thought. Life. David turned. A path had opened through the glass. You must stop him, the gods said, before the bell rings. Without hesitation, David ran. He didn't know how much time he had, if time even worked. The same here, but he ran fast. The path twisted through nothingness, sometimes turning upside down, sometimes becoming stairs, sometimes just floating air. Lights flickered beside him. Sometimes he heard voices, his own, sometimes screaming, sometimes laughing. Then the path ended. A gate stood before him. Not stone, not metal. It was made of memory, floating images from his own life. His mother smiling. His brother dying in the fire. The first time he looked up at the stars. And then, the image of him touching the trial gate. It burned like fire. David stepped through. He was in the core. The space was endless, black and red and alive, pulsing with the heartbeat of the sleeper. At the center stood a spire of bone and glass. At its top, a golden bell, and standing before it, the copy. It turned slowly, smiling with David's face. But its eyes were hollow, glowing red from within. You followed me, it said. Good. Now you can watch. David stepped forward. You can't ring that bell. You'll destroy everything. The copy tilted its head. You think this world deserves to live? You saw the visions, the wars, the lies. You saw what humans do. I saw it, David said. But I also saw something else. Hope. Change. Possibility. You only see the worst because you're not real. You're just what's broken inside me. The copy laughed. It echoed like thunder. I'm more real than you. I'm the one who dares to finish the trial. I'm the one who's strong enough to act. It turned and stepped toward the bell. David ran forward. The ground cracked beneath them. Fire burst from below. The sleeper stirred. One eye, massive and full of stars, opened slowly. David reached the copy and tackled it to the ground. The two struggled, blow after blow, punches, kicks, elbows. But they were evenly matched. Same strength, same skill, same pain. The bell began to glow. David knew he couldn't win by fighting, so he stopped. The copy paused, confused. Giving up? David looked him in the eyes. No, I'm accepting you. The copy blinked. I am not your enemy, David said. You are my fear, my anger, my pain, but you are also my strength, my courage, my will to survive. The chamber pulsed. The copy's face began to crack. You are me, David whispered, and with that he pulled the copy into a tight embrace. The fire stopped. The bell faded. The copy screamed, but it was not a scream of hate. It was sorrow, grief, release. Then, silence. The copy was gone. David stood alone. The gods returned. Their shapes filled the chamber. You have done what no one else could, they said. You faced yourself, and won. David fell to his knees. The bell vanished. The sleeper closed its eye. The trial amended. David lay on the floor of the core, his chest rising and falling slowly. The silence around him wasn't empty. It was thick, full of hidden meaning. The gods stood above him, their eyes glowing like stars behind clouds. You passed the trial, they said. David didn't move. His body felt like it had been crushed and rebuilt. His mind was filled with fire, light, memory, and something else. Something new. "What happens now?" he whispered. The god of mist stepped forward. "You returned your shadow to yourself. The trial accepts this, but the world is not the same anymore." David stood slowly. His clothes were torn. His skin was covered in glowing symbols, softly pulsing like heartbeat veins. "What do you mean? Not the same?" "The moment the bell awakened," the god of stars said, "it was heard by others." "Others?" David asked. "The old ones. Not gods. Not men. They wait in the dark between stars. They listen for cracks. That bell was a crack." Suddenly, the core flickered. Images rushed through the space. A black sun rising over a dead planet, ships made of bone drifting in space. A creature, huge, insect-like, with a face of ash, opening its eyes for the first time in thousands of years. David stepped back, breathing fast. "Are they coming here?" "Not yet," the god said. "But the trial was supposed to stay sealed. You opened it, and now their attention is on you." David felt a chill deep in his soul. The gods were watching, but something else was watching, too. "You must leave now," the god said. "Return to your world. Prepare." David nodded, unsure what prepare even meant. He was just one man. The gods lifted their hands. The core melted away. A flash of white, and David found himself back at the base of the mountain. It was night. Stars above. The wind cold and sharp. But the world felt different. He looked down, at his hands. The glowing marks were still there. But now they were fading, slowly sinking beneath his skin, as if they were becoming part of him. He heard something behind him. Turning, he saw the old gate, the one he had entered on the first day, but now it was closed again. The symbols had vanished, as if it had never been opened. David turned to walk away, but the mountain whispered, not with words, not with sound, just a feeling. "We are still watching." He made it back to his truck. The drive home was silent. No music. No lights. The road seemed longer than before. When he reached the edge of town, things felt even stranger. He passed a billboard, an old one, advertising some soda. Except now, the face on the ad looked like his own. Not exactly, but enough to send a chill down his back. At a red light, he looked into the rearview mirror. For a moment, just 1 second, his reflection blinked before he did. David didn't sleep that night. He sat on the floor of his apartment watching the sky through his window. Around 3 a.m. the stars moved, not fast, just a small shift. But it was real. And one star, red, dim, small, wasn't there the night before. It blinked, just once, like it saw him. David closed the curtain. The next morning his phone buzzed. A message. No sender, just 3 words. "He saw you." David stared at the screen. He didn't know who he was, but somehow, he already knew. The trial had ended. The real game had just begun. 3 days passed. David didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the trial, the gods, the bell. But worst of all, he saw that star. The red one. Closer now. Brighter. He stopped going to work. Stopped talking to anyone. Even his phone acted strange. Battery drained too fast. Screen flickered with static. Apps opened on their own. And every night at 3 a.m., the same message appeared. "He saw you." One night something changed. The message came early, at 2:47, and this time it wasn't just words. There was a video link. No name. No title. David stared at it, then clicked. The video began with darkness. Heavy breathing, a flashlight beam shaking in the dark. Then a man's voice. "If you're watching this, you've been marked. Just like me." David leaned in. "I went into the trial in 1998, the man said. "Different gate, different place, but same thing, same gods, same test." The camera showed his arm, covered in fading marks like David's. "You think it ends when you leave?" the man said. "No. That's the lie. The trial opens you, and when it does, something else looks inside." The screen glitched. His voice became static. Then came one final sentence: "We're not alone anymore." The screen went black. David sat in silence. Then his doorbell rang. 52M. He froze. No one should be outside. Another ring. David picked up a kitchen knife and crept to the door. He opened it slowly. A woman stood there wrapped in a dark coat, hood covering her face. She spoke quietly. "David Holloway?" He didn't answer. "I'm like you," she said. She raised her sleeve. Her arm glowed faintly with the same marks. He stepped aside. She entered without fear. "My name's Mira," she said. "I escaped my trial 5 years ago. You just passed. Yours. That means they're coming for you now." David sat down, still gripping the knife. "Who's coming?" "Not the gods," Mira said. "The things outside them. The Watchers. They smell the trial's scent on us. They track us through our memories." David frowned. "How do you know all this?" Mira looked down. "Because they took my brother. He passed his trial before me. And then, one night, he just vanished. All that was left was a mirror with his reflection still moving inside it." David felt his stomach twist. "They don't kill us," Mira said. "They copy us. Study us, then replace us." Suddenly the lights flickered. David and Mira both stood up fast. The air felt heavier, colder. Outside, the red star pulsed. It was closer now. No longer a star, but a shape. Long, thin, like a crooked finger reaching from the sky. Mira ran to the window. "They're early." David stepped back. "What do they want?" Mira turned to him. "Your voice. The gods listened to you. That means your voice can open things. Gates, bells, locks. They need you to speak." Then they heard it. A knock. Not on the door. On the mirror in the hallway. David stared. The knock came again. 3 soft taps. Then silence. He stepped toward the mirror. The reflection stared back. Then blinked. Before he did, Mira shouted, "Get back!" The mirror cracked down the center. A thin, pale hand reached through. David ran. Mira pulled something from her coat, a glass knife that shimmered like moonlight, and slashed at the mirror. The hand vanished. The mirror shattered. Mira turned to David. "Breathing hard, you're not safe here anymore. You have to leave. We all do. There's a place off the grid underground. Others like us hide there. Some passed, some failed." David shook his head. "Why me? I didn't ask for this." Mira looked at him with sad eyes. "None of us did. But the moment you heard the gods, they heard you too." Outside, the sky burned for a second. The red light stretched wider like a wound opening. Then it faded. But they both knew it would return. And next time, it wouldn't knock. David didn't pack much, just what he could grab in 5 minutes. The sky was already changing. The stars were moving again like they were watching. The red one was no longer far. It pulsed like a heartbeat. He and Mira left in her car. The roads were empty, darker than usual. Even streetlights flickered like old candles. "Where are we going?" David asked. "To a place no one can find unless they pass the trial," Mira said. "It's deep in the desert. They call it the Silence." "The Silence?" Mira nodded. "Because out there, they can't hear us. Not the Watchers, not even the gods. Nothing reaches that far." David looked out the window. Something in the sky moved. But it wasn't a plane. It had no lights. Just a long shape, floating above the clouds. They didn't speak again for hours. Finally, they reached a dry, broken road. It led to a wide canyon hidden by cracked earth. Mira parked, then opened a hatch covered by sand. A metal staircase led underground. It smelled like dust and old fire. They walked for 10 minutes until the tunnel opened into a huge chamber. It wasn't made by machines. It felt older than stone. Glowing patterns ran along the walls, and waiting inside were others, maybe 20 people, all silent. Each one had the same faint glow on their skin. David looked at them. One man had no eyes, only sealed skin where they should be. Another woman had black veins crawling across her neck, pulsing slowly like vines. A young boy held a bell made of bone, tied to a string around his wrist. It never rang. Mira whispered, "They all survived their trials, but none came back the same." A tall man walked forward. His face was half covered by a mask carved with symbols. "You brought him," the man said to Mira. "He passed a trial." "The gods hadn't opened in over 1,000 years, she replied. The masked man looked at David. "What did they show you?" David hesitated. "I saw myself, a copy, a shadow of me that tried to ring a bell buried in the core." The masked man didn't move, then said, "He brought the bell with him." The others gasped softly. David stepped back. "No, I didn't." Mira grabbed his arm. "Check your chest." David reached under his shirt. His fingers touched something cold. He pulled it out slowly. It was a small black bell, made of the same material as the one in the trial, but this one was silent. "No one leaves the trial empty-handed," the masked man said. "If you stopped the copy, the trial gave you its voice." David stared at the bell. "Why?" "Because the real fight hasn't started yet," Mira whispered. Suddenly the lights dimmed. The glowing walls faded to black. Everyone went still. The air turned cold. Far above, they heard it. 3 soft knocks. Then a voice. Not human. Not from the room. It sounded like it came from every wall at once. "You carry the bell. You carry the sound. You will open what must not open." David gripped the bell tighter. Mira backed away. The masked man raised his hand. "Shield the chamber." The others moved fast, chanting in a strange, broken language. Symbols on the walls began to glow again, red this time. But the knocking didn't stop. Knock, 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 then a scream from the far corner. Everyone turned. The boy with the bone bell was gone. Only the string remained. His bell was ringing, slowly, by itself. Mira shouted. They broke through. The wall cracked. Something long and thin pushed through, like a spider's leg made of smoke. David stepped back, his heart pounding. "They're inside." The masked man pointed at David. "Ring your bell." David shook his head. "I don't know how." "Just think of the trial," Mira yelled. "Of what you feared." David held the bell high. He thought of the gods, the shadow of himself, the sleeper, the copy that nearly destroyed him. Then, the bell rang. Once, soft but deep, like thunder under the earth. The smoke creature froze, then screamed, a high, awful sound that made blood leak from everyone's noses. The walls glowed white. The creature burned away. Gone. Silence returned. David dropped the bell, his hands shaking. Everyone stared at him. The masked man stepped forward. "The gods gave you their voice. You are now their last warning." David looked up, breathing hard. "What warning?" The masked man turned to the wall. It was now covered in a symbol no one had drawn. It was the red star. But now, it had an eye in the center. Watching. Waiting. The red star was no longer just in the sky. It had come closer. Now it floated above Earth's upper orbit, like a wound in space. You could see it with the naked eye. It pulsed, slowly, like it was breathing. People across the world felt strange. Time moved slower, dreams became darker, and at exactly 3 a.m., millions of mirrors cracked without warning. The watchers were here. David stood in the center of the hidden chamber, surrounded by survivors of the trials. Mira stood beside him. The masked leader, Eldon, held an old map made of skin and light. The bell David rang was placed on a black altar. It glowed, but no sound came from it now. "This is the final gate," Eldon said. "The gods are silent. That means they've stepped aside. What happens next is not their doing, it's yours." David stared at the map. At the center was a mark, an X drawn in blood. Beneath it, one word was written, "Sleeper." Mira whispered. The sleeper was not a god. It was something before the gods. They locked it beneath time. Only a voice from the trial can wake it, or put it back to sleep. David understood now. The red star wasn't a planet, it was an eye, and something behind it was starting to open. "What do I do?" he asked quietly. "You must enter the final trial," Eldon said, "but this one has no end. If you pass, you will not return. If you fail, the world ends with you." David's hands trembled. He didn't want to be a hero. He didn't want to be anything. But he was chosen the moment he rang that bell. Mira placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'll walk with you as far as I'm allowed." They left the chamber. The others remained behind, chanting softly in a language older than memory. The desert above had changed. The sky was torn open. Red light poured down like rain. But in the distance, rising from cracked sand, stood a black tower, thin, endless, waiting. They walked toward it. No birds, no wind, just silence. When David stepped through the tower's entrance, Mira stopped. "I can't go in," she said. "Only one voice is allowed." David looked at her one last time. She smiled sadly. "Don't speak unless it's time." Then he walked inside. The tower was not built by hands. The stairs were made of moving stone. The walls breathed, and the further David climbed, the more his body changed. Glowing marks returned, spreading across his chest and neck, wrapping around his eyes. At the top of the tower, a door waited. It was shaped like a mouth, closed, breathing. He placed his hand on it. It opened, and inside was the sleeper. It was not a person, not a creature. It was a shadow of thought, a memory that had waited too long. It had no eyes, but it saw him. No mouth, but it spoke. "You carry the bell." David stepped forward. "I carry the voice. Will you use it?" David looked down. The bell had returned, now in his hand. He remembered the trial, the gods, the watchers, Mira, the others, Earth. He remembered his own copy and what fear had taught him. He raised the bell. The sleeper moved, slowly, painfully, reaching toward him. One sound, and I fall. One silence, and I rise. David hesitated. If he rang the bell, the sleeper would vanish again. But so would the truth. No one would know what almost happened. If he stayed silent, the world would end. But he would understand everything. The bell shook. His voice broke through the fear. "I choose silence." He dropped the bell. It hit the floor and rang once. The sound was soft, but it echoed through time. The sleeper screamed. Its form cracked. Its thoughts collapsed. It reached toward David, but he was already fading. Some say the red star vanished that night. Others say it still watches, waiting. David Holloway was never seen again. But sometimes, just before dawn, people hear a sound. A single bell, ringing from nowhere, warning the world. Someone entered the trial, and the trial still listens.